Hi, everybody. This is Dr. Todd. Welcome to the new segment that I'm going to be doing every Thursday that focuses on tools for recovery. Like, what are the things that we can actually do to heal our own sense of self if we grew up in a home where there was parts of our self-concept that were injured? And even though this channel is about effigism, and I focus a lot of my attention on the whole phenomenon of effigism, I just want to be clear that the things that we're going to be talking about in this segment every week are going to be things that will apply to your life, regardless of whether it was an ephigistic home where you grew up, or you grew up with a narcissist, or there was emotional neglect, or there was a lot of abuse and trauma or addiction, or you were shuffled around, between family members, or if you were in foster care and things like that. Any childhood where there was a significant disruption in the sense of self, in our kind of development of our core self-concept, what we're going to be talking about here is going to be relevant. Of course, I'm going to be making a lot of references to effigistic stuff, but it won't be just for people who were one of the failed state proxies in an effigistic household. So this really came not only from a lot of your viewer comments, but also when I was in my own recovery, there was this idea of, how do I want to say this? Just understanding why I was hurting, or knowing that, my parents did things or other experiences impacted my sense of self. It's like, well, there's value in that. But now what? And I was working with a mentor at the time who was a very, very good guy. And I don't remember what I was complaining about. I was talking about something that had happened in my childhood that was particularly harmful. And he looked at me and he's like, "So what? Now what?" And I was a little bit taken aback by that at first. I'm like, what do you mean, so what? I mean, that was a very significant event. I mean, I was really hurt. And he's like, no, you don't understand. It's like, yes, I get that. We need to have space for that. We need to acknowledge the wounds that we have. But if that's as far as we go, we never leave that place, right? We remain anchored in that wounded place. So what are we going to do? What is going to be our next step so that our entire life doesn't become oriented around or anchored in those traumatic events that we experienced as we were growing up, or even in adulthood, in our relationships? I mean, I talk a lot about childhood stuff, right? Because that's where a lot of it started. But we can also be in relationships with partners who are very effigistic, who really try to undercut us, or they're narcissistic, or there's addiction. We have, neglect within or domestic violence within the relationship. And so all of that, it's like the recognition and the understanding is one piece. But if we really want to get beyond that and create a life that is freaking awesome, that isn't always just organized by our trauma and the things that trigger us, and always like selecting the wrong partners, or putting ourselves in positions to be taken advantage of or hurt, or constantly being in a pattern of people pleasing and all of that, we have to start implementing some strategies in our life that are going to start creating some new experiences for us, right? And helping us heal our self-concept And even though there's going to be parts of us that can never be fully healed, right? Because we can't just unexperience the things that we've experienced, right? Those are a part of us. But those things no longer have to be the directing force in our life, right? They're kind of like potholes in a road, right? Where once we identify where they are and we can put a little marker there, then as we're approaching, we can go, oh yeah, okay, this is a familiar thing. I'm going to just kind of direct myself around those potholes and navigate through this whole situation a little bit differently and with some intent, so that I don't keep getting jostled around by emotions that seem overwhelming and flooding and dysregulated, or parts of myself that just feel awful, or continuing to put myself in places where I am hurt, right? And so this first episode, I want to talk about three components that are important in our overall kind of what I would call a healing mindset, right? I mean, this is kind of our orientation going forward. I mean, what are some basic principles that we need to apply in our life to help us navigate through this stuff more effectively? Because it is not enough just to say, well, just stop being sad. People like to quote this old saying by, I think it was Abraham Lincoln, who said that, people are as happy as they make their minds up to be. And it's like, you know what? I appreciate his skills as a statesman, but man, he is dead wrong when it comes to psychology, because I have never met in my life a person who is really struggling with a broken sense of self that just kind of likes being that way, right? I mean, we hate it. And it's like, and if we'd be willing to do anything, we just don't know what to do. And oftentimes we just don't even have a frame of reference for even understanding what's going on. And so this whole idea that we're just sad or unhealthy, or we just keep getting into bad relationships because we somehow want to, is just freaking nonsense, right? Just freaking nonsense. But then why are we stuck in those places, right? Why are we stuck in those places? And how do we get out of them? And so the first thing that I just want to share that's part of this overall healing mindset is this idea that clarity is power. Clarity is power. Information is not necessarily helpful unless it really clarifies what's going on. If you have a leak in your roof, knowing that water is getting into your house, and just like, oh my God, every time it rains, everything gets wet. My sheetrock is all bubbled. There's stains on the ceiling, and there's probably rot in the wood. And just knowing that that's happening is not necessarily going to solve the problem, right? What we need to do is we need to clarify, where is the leak? What is actually leaking? How big is it? And where is it located? And what do we need to do to fix it? Because unless we can fix that leak, we're just stuck sitting in a house that is slowly becoming moldy and destroyed by water intrusion, right? Medical tests are only helpful in allowing a physician or somebody to diagnose the source of our pain or the source of whatever is going on. Just having information about your health generally it doesn't do anything. Even knowing where the pain is only helpful in so much as it helps to clarify what is actually going on, right? And so one of the reasons why I tend to nerd out a bit when talking about the mechanism and all of the stages and the details about what is happening in an ephagistic relationship is because all of that will provide clarity to hopefully, right, help you really identify and understand what is going on here, right? Where are these negative comments that I get coming from? Where's this undermining coming from? Why do I feel a certain way? And when I am interacting with an ephagist, how do I have a framework for interpreting what is going on in a way where I don't internalize all of those negative messages? And I want to give an example of this. I had a viewer who left a comment on one of the videos, and I want to read that for you because I think that really captures this whole idea. Love your channel. I have to share. I went to breakfast with my dad and all was going well. And then I told him I had my best month ever in business. Then he just ripped me down after that. The shots just kept flying and I was like, oh my God, the monster came out again. What did I do? Why did I share? I forgot for 5 minutes and boom, he tried to crush me. I never let him though. I just took note and wow, gotta learn from this. My lesson. I got this. No more BS from these MFers. So thank you for giving me a baseline to see things from. I see the way it is so clearly now. Thank you for your channel. Let's go. Never give up. What was so beautifully articulated in that was that Divine Strategies was able to use the framework of ephagism to clarify what was happening in the moment. And then all of a sudden, it's like as soon as they communicated that, look at how I'm succeeding, then it's like, then the monster came out. And they were able to be like, okay, I understand what's happening. I'm not going to take those barbs. Because now I can place that shame where it belongs, and it doesn't belong in me. It is on them, right? It is on them. And so having clarity around the mechanism, and it doesn't matter if we're talking about ephagism, emotional neglect, narcissism, addiction, any of those things, when we have some clarity around what is happening and why, it gives us some power to not only not take the barbs, but also relocate the shame that we had internalized back to where it belongs. And it really belongs on the ephagist. It belongs in that process. It belongs in that dynamic. It doesn't belong in us. And that brings me to kind of point number 2 in this whole mindset of recovery. And that is the idea that we need to be responsible for taking care of our side of the street and allow the other person to take care of their side of the street. One of the things that can happen when we grow up in a place where we have a damaged sense of self, there is a part of us that is seeking repair, right? And we want the kind of the person who hurt us to be able to suddenly go, oh my God, I now realize what I have done. I am so sorry. How can I make this better? We want that more than anything. And so much of our behavior, trying to re-engage, and even when it doesn't come to our parents, but even in like how we orient ourselves when people pleasing and all of that, a lot of that is driven by a very deep sense of wanting to repair, wanting to get some validation, wanting to get the people who had hurt us to say, you know what, that was really unfair of me. I am sorry. Let's see what we can do to make that better again, right? Because all of us want that. That's part of human nature. When we are wounded, we want some accountability. That's why we want to see bad guys arrested, right? It's not like it's like not that the crime is undone, but at least there is like some kind of acknowledgement. There is some kind of validation, and there is some kind of consequence that can happen. And what oftentimes happens is that when we have a wounded sense of self, we oftentimes will tend to busy ourselves in trying to, heal another person, or come in and be the rescuer, or go in and do things for other people to make them feel better so that they will somehow recognize our value, right? Or we're somehow like rescuing ourselves in a way by, being the hero and rescuing another person, and just giving of ourselves and giving of ourselves and giving of ourselves. And part of that dynamic is that in an effort to try to make ourselves feel better and try to get some repair, we are kind of living on the other person's side of the street. And if it's with a parent who is effigistic or narcissistic, it is like kind of denying our own needs and trying to meet them where they are at in order to try to get them to acknowledge us. When we are people pleasing, we are doing the same thing. Codependency is all about that. A lot of those kind of behaviors where we're not taking care of ourselves, where we are not treating ourselves with dignity and respect and setting healthy boundaries, it is because we are subconsciously, we are oftentimes trying to seek repair from the very people who are unable to provide it. And so this whole notion of paying attention to your side of the street and just allowing the other person to be responsible for theirs is a big shift in orientation for many of us. And it is like, there's almost like this sense of anxiety where it's like, you know what? My parent has to deal with their own stuff. I am no longer going to tie my sense of well-being to their performance. I am no longer going to do a bunch of stuff for other people in the hopes that they give me what I need. Because then what we are doing is, in a way, we're kind of reenacting that proxy dynamic that we grew up with, in that we are seeking our sense of self and our own validity and our own healing. We are seeking that from another person, and we are trying to manage their lives and their experiences and all of that in the hopes that positive things will be reflected back to us, and there will be oh my gosh, you are so amazing. But the problem with that dynamic is that it is an unhealthy one. And so we're going to be talking much more about breaking that dynamic and learning how to interact and relate to people in a much healthier way rather than kind of in that codependent way. But the first step to that is really focusing on our side of the street. It's like, okay, what do I need to do? What's my next little right step in order to establish my own well-being? And what do I need to do to heal? And just allow other people to have their reactions and say what they want to say and do what they want to do, because that is on them. What you do is on you. And setting that boundary, if you have been in a dysfunctional system for a while and a dysfunctional family, you will oftentimes experience some real retribution, right? Where people are like, how dare you, or you're the bad one, and how insensitive, and don't you care about blah, and we're oftentimes attacked and tried to made to feel guilty, or we are shamed for trying to just pay attention to our own well-being. Now, in a healthy relationship, if there was a parent or a partner or a coworker or a friend or whatever, if there was a healthy dynamic there, and you were like, you know what, this is something I need to change, because I need to focus a little bit more on healing some stuff in here and in interacting with people in a healthier way. And a healthy person would just go, oh, that's great. How can I be helpful? What can I do? That's awesome. Because they're healthy too. They want healthy dynamics, right? They don't need you to help them manage their own lives. That's that proxy dynamic. And the moment that you start setting a boundary and you start paying attention to your side of the street and just, what do I need to do to become healthier, then people who are relying on you in that proxy relationship are gonna start freaking out. And don't be surprised if you're accused of being all kinds of mean, nasty, and ugly things, because you are no longer serving in that role, right? You're just drawing a boundary and just saying, I'm not going to participate in this. I have to take care of my side of the street. Here are things I need to do for my own health and wellness, and it is okay for me to do that. And what you do on your side of the street, I just have to let that go. I have to let that be, even though there may be a part of me that feels really mean and really bad for being like insensitive and standing up for myself. That is a super important mindset piece, right? To kind of keep in mind, not to say the same word over and over again, but that is a really important idea to keep in mind, is that we have to take care of our side of the street, right? So the first one, again, it's all about clarity is power. The more that we can understand the dynamic and what is happening, the better we are able to navigate through that situation in a more intentional and healthy way. And the second piece of our mindset in growth and recovery is just focusing on what's on my side of the street, right? What's on my side of the street? What's in front of me? What do I need to take care of? And I need to let other people deal with their own stuff. And when I first set that boundary, I may get some pushback. And some of that may be significant pushback. And it may be triggering all kinds of things in me about how awful I am and how much I'm a failure and all of that. But if we have some clarity around this dynamic, perhaps we can just say, you know what, of course this is going to happen. This is part of breaking that cycle. This is just part of breaking that cycle. And instead of internalizing all of those negative comments, I am just going to relocate all of that vitriol, right? All of that pushback back onto the other side of the street where it belongs. It doesn't belong on my side. All I'm trying to do is I'm just trying to clean up my own life. I'm trying to clean up my own side of the street and start living in accordance with my own values and who I am, and actually kind of figure out who I am and try to grow and have better relationships and do all of that kind of stuff. But that's all on my side of the street. And what you do, I have to just take that hook out of me and just give it back to you, right? And just set that boundary and not and just resist the temptation, right, to jump over and now take responsibility somehow for making other people okay. The third thing that I want to say as part of our overall mindset is that action is really what matters. If you want to change, if you want to evolve, you have to create new experiences. You can't just think your way into being different, right? If you could just read a couple books and go, oh, that makes sense. Now I'm better, right? It just doesn't work that way. I mean, that clarity will help you understand the dynamic, but it is not the thing, that it is not the engine of growth. It is what gives you the map. The taking care of your side of the street is what starts to disconnect you from being anchored to some of the other, to a dysfunctional system that is keeping you held in place. But you need something that is going to start propelling you in a new direction, and that is going to be action, because action is what builds momentum, and momentum is what is the engine that drives evolution. That is what is going to actually make you change. And I say this sometimes to people I work with. It's like when you're changing, when you're starting to grow, it's like I don't care what you think. I don't care what you feel. What I care about is what do you do? Because if you take the right action, if you take just the next little teeny next step, if you're feeling overwhelmed and chaotic and you're like, oh, I feel terrible, I'm just going to end this relationship that's good for me because of how I'm just in the middle of this, this internal emotional collapse, and I feel like nobody loves me, everybody hates me. I may as well just end this relationship because they're soon going to find out how awful I am. It's like, you know what? Feeling like that is okay. I get it. That's part of the woundedness. Those are some of our wounded parts of ourself that are being activated and just screaming all of those old scripts at us, right? But what's going to matter in those moments is what's the next little right step. Am I going to end that relationship that would have otherwise been a potential positive thing for me? Am I going to quit the job? Am I going to disconnect with friends? Or am I going to take the next little right step and say, you know what? I really, really am feeling triggered right now. And oh man, I feel terrible. I feel awful. That is true. And what's my next little right step, right? What's my next little right step? And sometimes the next little right step is not doing anything. Sometimes the next little right step is waiting until whatever's being triggered, whatever storm is going on, passes before we start making decisions. Because when things get triggered in here, it is like there is a part of ourselves that gets knocked out of the driver's seat of our own life. And these wounded old scripts and, fears and what I call personal demons, right? These wounded parts of ourselves take over and start directing our attention and directing our behavior. And then we oftentimes will end up doing things that undermine the very thing that we're trying to accomplish. And so when we recognize that we're being triggered like that, sometimes the next little right step literally is to do nothing until we are back in the driver's seat, right? We just want to turn off the car, so to speak, so that, our trauma reactions can move the wheel and stomp on the pedals, but it's like nothing's going to move until they fatigue, drop back out, and we can take over get back in the driver's seat of our own lives. And then once we're there, The thing that we have to focus on is how do I establish better relationships? Not only with myself, but with others. Where am I going to set some boundaries with things like parents, family, friends? How am I going to reach out and find some new and healthy people? What do they even look like, right? What does a healthy person even look like? I have no idea. But I have some idea in my head of how I would like to be treated differently. So is there something little, just a tiny step that I can do today that will help me move in that direction? Just create a tiny bit of momentum in the right direction, because over time, if we just keep taking the next little right step, even if we feel crazy and we're really struggling and we feel awful and we think everybody hates us and our entire life has been a complete disaster, or even if we've been really successful in some parts of our life, there are other parts where we just feel absolutely bewildered on what to do. It's like you don't necessarily have to know the end point right now. What you need to do is you just need to pull up the anchor and just start sailing in the general direction, right? It's like if you recognize that there are some people who are pretty mean, avoid them. If you notice that there's somebody who seems to be very nice and very considerate, go towards them, right? And it's just it's a process of kind of successive approximation and learning what we like and what we don't like and what works for us and what doesn't, and understanding that there are going to be times when we're going to make progress, there are going to be times when we have setbacks, and all of that is okay. Because as long as we are just taking the next little right step, however imperfectly, that is going to start building the momentum that is going to be the engine of our transformation in life. But if we just sit there waiting until we kind of got it all figured out before we take the next little right step, we're just never going to move forward. Because self-knowledge, while valuable, it is one piece, right? It is the map. It is the map of where we need to go and how to navigate through things. But the map itself, pulling out a map, is not going to get you from LA to New York, right? It just isn't, because that is not what's going to move you there. It is taking the action of picking up your car keys, walking to the garage, getting in the car, or getting on a plane, or getting on your motorcycle, getting on your bike, putting on your walking shoes, whatever it is, right? It's the next little right step that is going to create the momentum that is going to bring about change. And for a lot of people, myself included, just even taking that next little right step is like, I don't even know what to do. I don't know what that looks like. How do I know what step to take? And even though this may sound kind of silly, even a step would be, I'm going to write down on a piece of paper 3 people who I think are awesome and I would like to either know or emulate or learn from them. And then if that's the only thing you do in that day, that's fine. If another day, you just reach out and make a phone call to somebody who maybe you haven't talked to in a while, but somebody who you really respect and somebody who you value, and you just say something like, hi, I know we haven't chatted in a while. I just wanted to reach out and just say that I've been thinking about you, and it would be great to chat sometime or something like that. I mean, even just something simple as that. Just start reaching out to some positive people. Just do something, and it almost doesn't even matter what it is. It doesn't even matter in a sense. It kind of doesn't even matter if it's the perfect thing. But the getting unstuck is so important. And taking the next little right step will do that. So these are just three of several, right? We're going to be talking more about this and really getting into the detail about how to really get out of this place of being stuck in this pattern when you have a wounded sense of self, and how do you heal, and how do you move forward? How do you establish healthier relationships? How do you set boundaries? How do you do all of that? We're going to be talking about that stuff because that's really what matters, right? I mean, knowing all of this stuff about effigism is important, but the more important thing is transforming your life so that you can live a healthier, happier life that you should have been able to get, right? But we don't choose our parents, we don't choose the environment we are brought up in, but by taking responsibility for our side of the street, we can start building a better life today. So I hope you found this helpful. If you did, please hit the subscribe button. When you subscribe, YouTube uses that information to kind of gauge, is this stuff that is valuable to people? So every subscription tells YouTube this is good stuff for people to know, and then YouTube will promote it more. So thank you again. I'll see you next Thursday when we do, when we do another segment. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.